There are two sides to every story. The National Broadcasting Company presents the vivid drama of life itself. Broadcasting's original program of Mediation, the Court of Human Relations. And now the man who has familiarized millions of people with the idea of mediation helped to make it a creative force in American life. A.L. Alexander.
In a world so concerned with the elemental struggle for existence, tensions and animosities among us do arise. And mediation deals with real-life conflicts, the misunderstandings that interfere with a peaceful and happy existence. You are now about to witness an actual mediation proceeding with both sides, the actual persons involved, agreeing to abide by the decision. The concept is that there can be no progress in any aspect of human relations, whether it be in the field of government or industry or in our personal relationships, without some measure of concession and compromise. We welcome our distinguished mediators who lend dignity and meaning to this hour by virtue of their participation. An eminent member of the bar, a noted educator, a famed clergyman, Judge William A. Wachenfeld, Dr. Paul Dawson Eddy, Dr. Harry Emerson Fosdick. Now, here is a case where the view of impartial mediators can certainly establish some semblance of order to take the place of the present confusion and disorder. Here is the complainant.
Yes. Both my husband and I came from a family where there were never any financial problems. In fact, we ourselves never had any until 5 or 6 years ago.
And what happened then?
My husband met with severe financial reverses and illness. We found ourselves in a position where we had to change our entire mode of living and curtail many of the luxuries that we had been accustomed to.
And why specifically have you come here? I want the board to know.
I'm not here actually to complain, but to try and make my husband understand that there are other things in life but prestige.
How about money? Is that important?
The power of money, a large home, a big car, servants, and all that goes with it, living up to the Joneses.
Now, what are these other things?
Peace of mind and security. My husband has not been the same person since he has gone through these losses. His whole world seems to have collapsed, and he just cannot adjust himself to realize that there are other things than those as belonging to a social class and all that goes with it.
Well, now, specifically, what is it that you have in mind?
I want him to forget the exclusive clubs to which he belonged, the people who today wouldn't do a single thing to help him, and be a man. Go out and get a job at $100 a week and forget the past.
And what does your husband believe?
He believes that inasmuch as he had been successful in the past, he just can't be a little fish in a big pond. He wants big propositions or nothing. And the result is, he always gets nothing. Now, don't you think the past should be forgotten?
Well, now, suppose we hear from the husband. Now, how do you feel about this?
Mr. Alexander and members of the board, can't you understand that a man has been used to several things in life and the better things, but it's rather difficult this time to adjust himself? This is something that my wife does not understand.
Well, now, can't you throw all of this aside?
Well, that's easier said than done.
Well, what do you feel that you'd like to accomplish?
Well, I feel that I'm going to be successful, and I'll going for the bigger things rather than the smaller things.
You don't want to bother with any piddling things?
No, sir, I do not.
Yes. Well, your wife tells us that peace of mind, security, these are the important things in life.
Well, that sounds good, Mr. Alexander, but it is not in my makeup.
What is in your makeup?
Well, I'm going for the bigger and the better things.
Well, now, I think this is a fair question. we understand that you come from a family that had a background of some wealth.
That is true. My father at one time had the largest business of its kind in America. And through litigation and taxes, no fault of mine, the outcome was that the present time dwindled down to nothing.
Yes. And at the present time, are you doing anything at all? You have, as I understand it, a desire for a big bonanza, a big break, as you call it. In the meantime, have you anything that you're doing?
I'm working on several deals, which I know one will at least anticipate in one turning out, and I'm waiting for that big break.
Well, may we ask you this question, sir? If you were offered a position at 100, or let's say 125 a week, while you're waiting for the big break, would you accept it?
I'm afraid I would turn it down, Mr. Alexander, unless I had a feeling or security that in due time that I would get a break. Other than that, the $100 would not interest me.
I mean, that's just paltry.
That's right.
Pay no attention to that.
Right, sir.
You see, my contention has always been that if you do have an income, even though it's a moderate one, you can always adjust yourself accordingly. But without ingredients, you can't bake a cake. And with nothing, you can do nothing. Now, how can there be a break if you never get off the ground and always live in the past? And he just won't see it.
You don't see that at all.
I do not agree.
Judge Walkenfeld?
Well, I think this husband and wife are to be complimented. They have their financial differences and their different ideas as to how to accomplish their problems, yet they're amiable and pleasant to one another. And that spells out a good deal of success. But I rather am inclined to agree with the husband. If he can keep up pretenses, as you call it, while he's looking for this pot of gold that he's sure is at the foot of the rainbow, I agree with him that perhaps the acceptance of a menial job might disqualify it from him, might prove to the world that he's been a failure and therefore have an adverse effect upon the opportunity which he thinks someday will present itself. But of course, he must be realistic about it. He can't go on forever looking for something that's never going to materialize. And then, to give thought to the other view, perhaps it might work out to your advantage. If you were to accept a menial job and make known to your friends and your associates the actual position that you're in, perhaps that will be the very thing that you don't expect, that will bring the aid and the assistance that you otherwise would not have, that can permit you to reach the goal that you're ultimately seeking. But I think he, the husband, it's his responsibility. He's the one to determine it. If he uses a sound judgment and first explores one avenue of approach and then the other, I think he's doing all we can expect him to do under the circumstances.
Well, now, Dr. Fosdick, Judge Walkenfeld, seems to be very sympathetic, and I'm sure we can understand that. But he seems to be extremely sympathetic toward this husband because of the husband's desire to keep up appearances. Now, how important is that in view of the situation that exists now, and what is your view on this general situation?
I wish I had a little more information as to the present financial problem which they face.
Well, suppose we, since you asked the question, let's get the information.
Yeah.
Without going into the actual budget, which of course is not something that we're entitled to do, is it a fact, sir, that your resources at the present time are not very plentiful?
That is true.
Dr. Fosdick?
Well, if, for example, they're in debt and running in debt, that presents a critical situation. I'm sympathetic with both of them. It's tough business, I have no doubt, although I never have experienced it. Once to have had plenty and now to find yourself on the edge, perhaps, of penury or indebtedness. So that I'm sympathetic with both of them. But I don't believe that the gentleman will keep up the appearances simply by waiting for a big break. I don't know all the business details and what means he may be taking to get a big break, but I know what I would do in his situation. I'd get a job. And I think that, as His Honor has suggested, might be the very thing that would bring him the respect and honor of all those who see him. Here's a real man up against a tough situation, takes a job and goes to it again. I think that is far more likely to be the road up toward the big break, if there is to be any. Now, that would be my judgment.
Dr. Eddy?
It's as if I'm cast in the role of mediating between the mediators. And I must say that my judgment concurs largely with Dr. Fosdick. I think the best way to get a job is to have a job. I think the best way to rebuild your self-respect is to develop a degree of security. Whether it's $100 a week or $125, you know then that you are providing the necessities. You're not dependent on someone else. And if your resources have gone, then you're either going to earn something and contribute to the support of the family, or you're going to go into debt.
Dr. Eddy, may we interrupt for just a moment? We'd like to ask you one or two questions. These mediators are attempting earnestly to be helpful, and they can only be helpful if they have sufficient background so as to shed light on the situation. In round figures, what would you say your father's business was worth?
Well,
Round figures.
It's in the $1 million.
Couple of $1 million?
Several million.
And we assume that you had a very substantial income. You were one of the heirs to his fortune?
Well, I
mean, in the good days.
Right.
Yes.
Then I was.
Yes.
But it seems the longer I go on, the less I have.
Yes. But did you have a big house?
Yes, so we had
big car?
Cars.
Did you have servants?
Right.
Everything that a well-to-do family has.
Right. And the only thing we have today is a headache.
Well, now we're trying to fix that headache, and that's what the mediation is for. Now, because of all this affluence and opulence, $100 seems like very small money to you, doesn't it?
Well, to be truthful with you, it does.
But do you have a $100 a week income now, we'll say? I don't want to be personal.
No.
Yeah.
I think the issue is clear,
Yes,
Doctor.
I suspect that either his father at one time worked for less than $100 a week and
Is that
in
true?
a very humble
Very
home
true.
and built his empire, his fortune out of that. But he started on that basis. I think the most important thing to me is what would happen to this man. First of all, if he continues the way he is, he cannot. The big break may or may not come, but he cannot have the dignity and self-respect and integrity which he needs to face the world. If he takes a job, he can say, well, my father began this way, and I'm going to reconstruct my livelihood. I'm going to do the best I can anyhow and discharge my obligations, and then he will have a sense of dignity and independence, and his wife, who's very gracious in her attitude, would have a respect and a sense of security which he is entitled to.
Well, Judge Walkenfeld, do you go along with that?
Partly, with the exception and on the condition as I had said before.
Well, Judge Walkenfeld, as we understand it, you feel very strongly about the fact that appearances are extremely important, and you feel very deeply for this man because you know that once he takes what he might consider a menial job, that he's made definite sacrifices. But then, on behalf of the...
I'm afraid that when that happens, then everybody will say he is where he should be, that is all he is worth, and the opportunity which he's looking for bigger things will have been destroyed.
Well, Judge, as an alternate then, since we have a very realistic situation to face, what do you suggest?
I suggest, as I suggested in my original statement, that it be left to the sound discretion of this man. He knows better his resources. he knows better his prospects, and he knows better what chances he has.
And his wife says that she's left it to her discretion, and they're in debt, and they don't have any big house, and they don't have any big car, and they don't have any servants, and they're lucky to get along.
They're not going to have a big house, and they're not going to have servants and a big car on $100 a week. That we don't.
Yes, but he might. We did not suggest that he give up trying to find the big break. And I do not think it's a liability for a man to be employed in an honest job and with a fixed income while he's looking for the big break.
Judge?
I agree with that, and I'm thinking also of his standing, his prestige. I think that must be very important to him.
Well, Judge Wachenfeld feels that he won't have any standing or prestige.
I think that does discredit to his associates, the people who know them, because it would give him prestige, certainly in my eyes, if facing a very difficult situation like this. He was man enough to start where his father started and come back again. Now that takes being a real man to do
Yes.
that.
Well, I think that
I
we
think
can
that many would
sum
feel
this
that
up.
same way about him.
I don't think it's determining his manhood or his courage. I think it's determining his business sense as to what is going to further his future interest and what is going to hamper them. And he seems to think
let's
the
ask.
exception of that job is the thing that will hinder it.
Well, let's ask this gentleman one more question. You've had this idea of the big break for 6 or 7 years, isn't that right?
That's true.
And the big break hasn't come. Is that right?
That's right.
To sum up, the board is not without sympathy or understanding for the position of the man here. It recognizes that at an age which is not exactly young, having been used to a certain way of life and regular income, it is far from easy to make adjustment, and there are certain advantages in keeping up appearances. But like everything else, it's a matter of degree and how long. And this board has pointed out that if there is activity of some kind, one thing leads to another. Forces are set in motion that can't possibly be imagined. The board is in agreement that after 6 or 7 years, just to wait for the big break is not to be recommended. Now, it's been said that the only thing you can safely predict about human nature is that it's unpredictable. Here is a case that would tend to bear out the wisdom of that observation, and the husband here is the complainant.
Mr. Alexander, can you understand why my wife, after 50 years, or to be exact, 54 years of marriage, wants to go out, be for herself, look for a job or anything like that, and leave me?
Would you tell us something about your habits?
My habits are good. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't run after women. Women don't run after me.
Well, can you tell us something about your background of business?
My younger days, I was very successful in the restaurant line. At one time, I had 2 big places, made money, made plenty of money. We had everything. My wife had everything.
And what did she have?
She had a home, she had a car, chauffeur, everything she wanted.
Yes, and then what happened?
Then prohibition, kind of.
Yes. Well, we understand that your wife is dissatisfied. How do you feel about that?
She has no business to feel dissatisfied. There's nothing that she should be dissatisfied.
Well, now, suppose we hear from the wife.
Well, I've been happy all my life. I really have no reason to complain. It's only the last few years that something has crept into our family.
And what is that? Do you find that your husband seems able to take care of himself?
Yes, he wants to be the man of the house, and all right, that part's all right, but then he has so many interests outside.
For example, what is the big
Well,
interest?
he
that
likes to go to lodge, and that's a natural thing too. But he wanted me to join in things, and I can't do that.
Yes.
Not at my age.
Yes. And do you find that he pays, or the children pay a great deal of attention to him?
Oh yes, they're all for their dad. Really.
Actually, more for their dad than they are for you. Is that right?
Yes, I don't know how I got
Yes.
got into such a dislike all of a sudden.
Yes. And what would you like to do? Your husband says you want to leave, you want to get out. Now, what do you want to do?
What can I do? I can't go and sit there and everybody is dissatisfied.
No, but what do you want to do with your
I'd like
time?
to take care of somebody if I could.
You mean an elderly woman?
An elderly woman, or what, if I can get something like that. That's another
in return
question.
for you get
Just
your board.
for the board and keeps, because at my age you don't take it so
Yes.
easy.
Do you love your
I'm
husband?
I do, in his own way. We've always been very chummy.
Mm-hmm.
It's in this place here that I can't get satisfied. I don't know what it is.
What do you feel like?
Like the fifth wheel of something or other.
Mm-hmm.
I have no special income of my own, and there I sit, and everybody else is twaddling in money. I don't know. I don't get anywhere.
Yes. Can your husband cook?
Yes,
And does he do cooking for himself?
he likes to cook.
Yeah. And he takes care of the house. He can do that. He's pretty self-sufficient. Isn't
Well, we only have 2 rooms. That isn't so hard to do.
Yeah, but whether it is or not, he does it, doesn't he?
Oh, he don't do that. No.
Well, he can do it, can he?
He can, yeah.
Well, do you feel that you're needed?
I don't think so.
And that's why you want to leave?
For one reason, yes.
Well, let's ask another reason. Has your husband been doing something behind your back for a number of years that you don't like?
Now, must I say that?
Well, you don't
Yes.
have to say it. Suppose we say it for you and ask you. Is it true that, in your opinion, he's been sending money someplace and you haven't been very happy about that?
Well, that only came to light lately. Before that, I was always supplied with whatever I
But
needed.
since
We
then,
had
you
no
didn't like
trouble.
the idea about his sending money over to the old country, isn't that right?
Well, he helped his sister out, I guess.
Yes.
That's
And you want to
can't
live with another
control.
woman and take care of her?
I'd like to do that.
Yes. Dr. Fosdick?
Well, I must say that I think that this gentlewoman's idea is completely unrealistic. No. You're 76 years old, so I understand?
74.
74. You're going out to take care of an older woman. Suppose in 6 months she dies. You won't
Yes,
have
sir.
anybody to take care of, and you won't have anybody to take care of you.
I realize that.
And
That's why I'm
it's completely
asking.
unrealistic. Now, may I say just one word more? I think the husband must take some responsibility for this. I mean to say, a woman needs to have attention paid to her.
Judge Walkenfeld?
After 54 years of married life, this woman wants to leave because there are certain dissatisfactions. And it would seem to me as though memories alone over that long span of time would be sufficient justification for your continuing on with your marriage relationship. Old age doesn't bring too many rewards, and the diminishing returns are more evident as the years go by. Separation may come quicker than you think. Curtain time for some of us is not too far off. And I would suggest that you revalue your determination and see if you won't be happier where you are rather than venture into a new field this late in life.
I know.
Loyalty in old age is perhaps one of the finest assets we can think of.
Yes.
Dr. Eddy?
You cannot break a pattern of 54 years of living and adjusting to each other at this stage. I would like to offer, if you desired it, some continuing counseling for you both through resources that we have that would be expert and helpful in making these adjustments. There's no future in any breakup. The only future is a readjustment to the realities of this situation for the rest of your lives together?
Well, I think that the board is agreed that if nothing more serious exists in the way of complaint than has been brought out here, it's perfectly clear that any considerable separation between these people after 54 years is likely to be painfully regretted. Somebody said not 54, but thousands of years ago that two are better than one. And it would seem that during the less robust years of life, that admonition would be especially true.